Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound.
Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I am Alrik the founding host of the podcast. I've been crewing up on sets for over 10 years. I've made dozens of films, shorts, and features as either a producer or a director, and I'm just finishing up my first feature film as a writer-director, The Alternate.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer, and sometimes casting director with 2 features under my belt and a third hanging out somewhere in the ether. I am also a former film critic, a current distribution consultant, and my claim to fame is that I used to manage a department at Sundance called the Creative Distribution Initiative.
This week we have senior sales manager from 1091 Pictures and filmmaker herself, Soni, on the show to talk about her work in distribution, the distribution opportunity she saw after COVID, which she was like super excited about, and she had this whole thing that she talked about, which is great. But you know, you'll see what happened with that. The making of her quarantine TV series, The Myth of Control, which was also very fun to hear about. We're gonna get right into our conversation with Sana, but don't go away after that. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't go away after, because we have a new short film, Mel and Ruby, that just like is gonna like have hit the day that this comes out. So it's like brand spanking new. We have the writer and star Julia Manis on the show to talk about the film, and we finally are going to read some YouTube comments. Finally, and we have a whole shit ton, more than normal. So yeah, stick around. We are here with Soni, sales manager at 1091. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with our 5 questions real fast. First off, give us the elevator pitch for your film, The Myth of Control.
Her series, her web series.
Sorry. Oh my God, strikes against me.
It is a 7-episode by 10 minutes web series, completely remotely shot, put together at the start of the pandemic, about 6 interconnected individuals who are also living through a pandemic. Not an anthology, because there is a lot of underlying interconnectedness through it all in the story, but each episode leans slightly towards more of a different genre. And it is so exciting to have it out in the world soon.
How many days did you shoot it?
It took about 23 days, but considering, you know, it was like 2 days here, 3 days there, clean out the equipment, send it to somewhere else, help them set it up, have them do it.
What was the rough budget?
So is it okay if I don't share that?
Sure.
Very, very low, basically. Very
Under
low.
$100 million.
Very south of that.
Okay.
It was purely just like us, you know, just my co-producer and I, just putting in whatever we could. And getting lots and lots of favors. And we were lucky to be in a position where lots of people weren't doing anything at the start of the pandemic. So we were so excited to have so much talent, and they were so happy to be working.
Yeah. How long did you spend working on it from the inception of the idea until its release?
Well, it's not released yet, so still now.
Yeah, so ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, on the 31st, it'll have been a year. I didn't realize it would take so long to see something through, but it's because I haven't done filmmaking in a long time.
You kind of answered this already, but how big was your crew?
We are now 77 people across 26 cities, 8 countries, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of levels, which is a huge reason why we did it that way as well, because it was all about the democracy of having people who really knew what they were doing. They'd been veterans in the business for decades, and students who just come out of like film school or a different school who got to do whatever it is that they wanted to do on a project. So that part is really important to us.
And compared to all the other projects, filmmaking projects you've made, how difficult was this one?
It's so hard to compare because it was so different, because it was 100% remote. So it was extremely educational, because there were 2 of us at the top working everything out. But also I have to mention that the last time I'd really done any real production had been a good 8 years before that. And I hadn't been, at the helm of it or producing it by any means. So it was very, very different, if that answers your question.
Yeah, well, let's go back a little bit, right? So you do work in distribution right now, but you are an indie storyteller. So I guess I'm curious, what is your history in being an artist?
So when I went from Eastern Europe to LA to go study at UCLA, I just wanted to do movies. I just wanted to be involved. So of course I got involved in every which way possible. And of course, with my natural leanings would lean more towards organizing things. That's kind of who I am. So I would head up film clubs. I helped with producing. I helped gather people. That was one of my talents, is finding really talented people around campus and bringing them together for projects, and producing some grad students' thesis films, including, I didn't produce this one, but I worked on Anna Lily Amirpour's short film. Like, it was so fun. I was just wrangling the extras. But that's kind of where I went. And then I realized, okay, I want to do more of the business side of things. I want to do the biz side of showbiz. So I started to, look for work in that field, and then continued to do that. And then went to London, continued to do that more, because as much as I'd loved production, I realized it wasn't really for me. I hated the early mornings. I found myself usually not being able to be of much use on set, minus the task that I'd been assigned, and it just didn't come naturally. So I was like, okay, I'll stick with the business side. But decided last year, it was such a brave new world, despite everything happening with, the pandemic. It was like, there's so much we can do here. There's a new way we can reconfigure who gets let in to make things. There's a new way we can configure how movies get distributed. There's so much. There's Brave New World. Oh my God, it's so exciting. And partially out of that, and my co-producer also coming to me saying, what if we managed to shoot something remotely? What if we could do this? And I was like, let's do it. And it was like the best adventure. But I knew that most likely I wasn't going to continue with production after that, because I knew that last year had been such a unique year. And even remote set, I wasn't much use on. That goes to show. I did everything like a true producer would, like before we got on set, or more of an executive producer would do, if that makes sense.
I want to hear more about what you said, this new way of distributing movies and, this new frontier that we're in. Like, talk about what that is, because I want to know more.
There was so much happening. I was obsessed. I had a spreadsheet of all the movies that were collapsing their theatrical windows. I was in the UK. So a lot of it was UK focused, but with a big US focus as well. Which ones were skipping their theatrical entirely? Which ones were going to a premium VOD release? So it's $20 to rent. Which ones were going to a normal VOD and buy release, which is $5, $6-ish, like normal? Which ones are being snatched up by streamers? So I had a spreadsheet going with that. I had all this research I was doing, which was all fascinating, on how this was going to affect our business. I realized, what are we going to do with the markets not happening this year, or can not happening? What's going to happen? And I got this crazy idea into my head of, and I spoke to a lot of people about it, about creating like a system, like an online market where you could attend, but I couldn't quite crack it. And to be honest, it doesn't seem like almost a year on anyone really has cracked it, because these markets happen around a certain time, but people can still do phone calls anytime, just because, you don't need to have a market happening virtually to meet someone for a meeting. If you're a filmmaker, distributor, an agent, that you might otherwise have done if you were attending in person. That's a completely different thing. We just can't replicate the in-person experience. So, but in the meantime, I learned a lot about what that could mean, and I got so excited about the filmmakers that I knew who had exciting, good projects that weren't able to put them out how they would have wanted to put them out. What can we do there? How can we get them to distributors? How can I help bridge this gap? So I can't say that, anything really came out of that, but I just learned tons and tons, and I'm really grateful for that.
And that's when you were working at a UK distribution company, right? Or is this, and then what brought you over to the US?
It was my partner's job, but it was also a chance to explore, just, stretch my abilities in terms of entertainment and working in entertainment. And that's definitely proved to be true, as I'm now working at 1091 Pictures, as Alrik mentioned. And that has been a wonderful experience. And I've only been there just over 3 months.
Wait, and I realized I skipped over like a more interesting question. So hold on. Because you're talking about the market, and it was really surprising to me when I ended up talking to international sales agents, and they're like, yeah, we used to like pitch films at these parties at Cannes and Venice, and like, what do we do now? And I'm just kind of like, well, those parties are like what filmmakers are upset and resentful over, like, at you for. So it's like very interesting to me that we had this kind of reckoning of what a market actually is. Is it a party? Or does shit really get done? And it sounds like it's both a party and where shit gets done. So I'm just curious, like, what can you tell us a little bit more about your attempt to do this virtual marketplace?
I spoke to my mentor. I spoke to who I had done a program with under an association in England called Creative England. It was a great program for producers and executives from late 2019 to early 2020. And we went to Berlin together at EFM, the European Film Market, in February last year. It was big hurrah, last hurrah. I spoke to tons of producers. I spoke to my colleagues at Signature. I spoke to sales agents I knew. But again, I just couldn't crack it. I couldn't come up with like a way to make one online destination compelling enough to where people would like sign up. And this is coming from someone who's barely attended any markets, by the way, and who, I'm relatively new to the world of international buying and selling of movies. So this was something that I was just thinking, why not? Let's go for it. Let's just learn as much as possible. And I just had lots of notes, but nothing, of course, came of it. But what did come of it was tons and tons of conversations with both people that I had known before and people that I was just meeting. And those were super useful also because I was getting to the States and needed to hustle to get a job. So
turned into a networking opportunity for yourself.
Yeah. It grew into that more as I was like, okay, let's put that aside and like continue to just network for myself because I want a job when I get to the States.
So talk about your role at 1091. Like, what do you do in your day-to-day at your job?
It's not going to be glamorous. I apologize. It's looking at a lot of spreadsheets. I do get to, and this is one of my favorite parts of the job, is have a really good excuse to watch the movies that I'm working on, have a reason to watch trailers for movies that we might be thinking of acquiring. Helping out with the artwork or title changes. That's something more that happened in my previous job. In order to help it bring my expertise in sales to the acquisitions team and say, well, this would work, this would not work. This kind of release date would work, that release date would not work, etc. All kinds. But my day-to-day really consists of lots of calls with the people that I am selling to. These are all of the AVOD clients that we mentioned, the ad-supported video on demand platforms. The biggest ones people might know of are obviously YouTube, Pluto, Tubi, Roku channel, and just having tons of conversations with them, figuring out what it is that they're looking for, what they're focusing on. Because at 1091, we have, I believe, 4,500 movies. So it's quite a lot to sift through. It's building what you call avails, which is like a list of, it can be up to a few hundred movies that you send off to these partners, these AVOD platforms and channels, and tell them, this is what we got for you. Would you like to take it? It's curating that list to make it interesting for them. It's when they have selected out of those hundreds or however many titles, it's ensuring that these movies get delivered and working with our team. it's then also making sure that they're reporting on time and paying on time and tracking how that's going against budget. So that's what I mean when I say it's not really exciting or glamorous.
So interesting, though. I just want to talk about distribution all the time. A lot of people thought of AVOD as like this great hope for distribution, right? Because transactional EST has been declining for years and years and years. And then SVOD leaves a lot of filmmakers, subscription VOD leaves a lot of filmmakers on the table, like the Netflix and the Hulu. Not a lot of people can get those deals, or pay TV deals, or premium cable deals. But a lot of people can get to Tubi, and a lot of people can get to Roku channel. Do you feel like you're part of like a hopeful window of distribution?
Yes, I am. Even though up until now, even a little bit now, it's kind of looked down upon AVOD because it's free, right? Mm-hmm. And I think up until even like last year, and unfortunately, I got to say this is more from my UK perspective. We have a fewer bunch of AVODs out there. It really was movies that had their day. If they're well known, if you've heard of these movies, they've had their day on all the other windows that we mentioned: theatrical, DVD, pay TV, SVOD. And so now the only way to really squeeze money out of it is just to put on AVOD. Or it was movies that you honestly would never have heard of as like a general person, of the public. You would never have heard of these movies. So I don't think it was a very glamorous or elite place to put your movie. Everyone wanted their movies on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon. But it is so changing. I think that is changing when you see the kinds of revenues that are coming in, when you see the ridiculous figures of Roku growing its subscriber base, growing year on year, beating their targets. It's like ridiculous to see. And of course, a lot of this is spurred on by the pandemic. Since a lot of people were inside, a lot of people wanted to conserve their money and not be throwing it around to subscriptions. And a lot of stuff being out there. One other thing is they started to learn about the importance of buying up rights to old nostalgic TV that is comfort viewing. Another is when the studios that own them, for example, Fox owns Tubi, or Pluto is owned by Viacom CBS, when they learned that these AVOD platforms were really growing, they started to work with them in a more meaningful way. If you remember, a few weeks ago, it was announced that the new CBS shows, Equalizer and Clarice, were going to have their pilot episodes aired both on TV normally and on Pluto, which was owned. And these little kinds of pieces of synergy that show you, okay, we're ramping up. This is really happening. And how the last bit, which I hope is like the most hopeful, is that there is money there. If there's money there for distributors, then there's money there for filmmakers, because it's going to flow down the line. So that part is one of the most exciting things, because it's like a brave new world of like ways to get your movie out there and make money on it.
So you're talking about presenting 200 or so movies to some of these AVOD companies. Out of that,
on a monthly or quarterly basis, by the way.
Okay. That out of those, how many will they take? And then, do you have any? Can you give us any rough figures of what they're paying per movie in order to have them on their services?
How many they take is so up to each platform. That is so different based on what they're looking for, how much capacity they have on their servers, if we happen to offer up titles that they were interested in to begin with, how much they're ramping up on acquiring new things. And secondly, I'm not quite sure this is how everyone works, but they don't pay for these. We just get a cut of the revenue. So that's something that you get once a movie's been up on there and it's made money off of the ads that are playing against it, and then we get a cut of that.
And just to follow up on that, like, do you have any idea of like how much one movie can generate, from an AVOD, over like 6 months, or is that data not really available?
So the data is not really available for so many reasons. The market is so new. And this is something I have to contend with every day when we are looking at new movies that might be coming in, and we wonder how much can we make in this window and that window and this window, and it's something that it keeps changing. It depends so much on what the movie is. It depends so much on who takes it. In my previous job, I worked on the transactional side. So that meant when a movie came out on home entertainment, it was instantly available, contractually so, on all of the places where a movie is available to buy or rent. Google Play, iTunes, Amazon, Microsoft, amongst a host of others. With that, you had like a homogenous place you could just go to and say, well, this kind of movie did really well on iTunes, but it didn't do well on Amazon. So you had day one for all these movies, and you had a clear path that they took. But with AVOD, it's not like that. It's you might have something live here, you may not have it live there. It maybe we acquired it for a certain platform, but suddenly that platform's gone out of business, or they're no longer interested. So it just keeps changing. But really, I think the sky's the limit on what a movie could make in 6 months or a year. I think it's only going to grow. Obviously, the more well-known it is, the more bigger names it has in it, or the more appealing the poster. You'll see a lot of raunchy, sexy pieces of artwork on these because they catch the eye. For distributors who don't have huge marketing spends, who don't put their movies out in theaters, a lot of times you just have to rely on a very catchy title, a face that people recognize in the poster, or art that people can just gravitate towards. And like, I know what that is. That looks like a horror. I'm in the mood for a horror. I'm going to go for that. So it depends on a lot of things, but it's quite high. There's in the hundreds of thousands, but how much of that makes its way back to the filmmaker? Yeah. And I'm talking like hundreds of thousands for multiple titles.
I wanted to shout out to Vampire Dog, which sold me with its poster one night. But I want to get back to, very rarely do I meet storytellers who also are in distribution and in for-profit distribution, right? And it sounds like you have a lot of enthusiasm for the support distributors are giving filmmakers. And I would say a lot of filmmakers resent distributors and think that they're always lying to them or manipulating the truth in some way. And there seems to be a blockade between distributors and filmmakers. So I've wondered if you could speak to, from your point of view, does it seem like distributors are exploiting films in the best way?
Not always, for sure. And I think that we've seen this across the community of filmmakers who is vocal and is hopefully quite supportive of each other. But in many ways, we have seen that they are supportive of each other and they share this information. That said, a lot of filmmakers sadly do work in a vacuum, so they do get exploited. So no, I can't speak to everyone. I haven't, obviously haven't worked with everyone or for too many distributors, but yes, I know that there are unethical practices, cooking books, and it's not fair to the filmmaker. But I am so glad to say that with 1091, we've been so transparent, and looking at what filmmakers say about us, it seems to be quite, it's definitely true that they're having a good result out of working with us. And one thing that made me so proud was to learn about, because again, I'm a little bit new, and some of these things have been happening in the background for a while since before I joined, and they're just launching now, is new systems in place that are going to be extremely transparent and detailed in the analytics of how your film, if it's distributed by us, is getting viewed. So how many views you're getting, how many minutes people are sitting down to watch your movie, on what platforms, and really beautiful graphs and infographics on all of that data, which I find so exciting because it's done really to help filmmakers. It's really done to support them. It's done in the name of absolute honesty and transparency. And obviously it makes business sense. The more open and helpful we are, the more movies will come our way also. So that part has made me so very, very proud, because having spoken to a lot of other people in distribution, I know that's not really the case. It's just like, get in, make your money, do what you got to do, piss off the filmmaker, just make your money. And unfortunately, it's not always going to be, sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be a lot of negotiation, I'm sure. But once again, unfortunately, that's on the acquisition side, and I can't really comment on that because I'm not really in the acquisitions teams.
So I'm really curious, like from a sales perspective, like what kind of movies are you excited to see like come into your library that you get to sell? Like what kind of movies are making your job easier to land deals with these different subscription services?
A lot of it comes down to just really obvious things. Like I said, it's a really obvious horror movie. People want to see that. It's got vampires in it. Maybe vampires are hot right now.
Or dogs that are vampires.
Yeah, I need to know what this movie is. As
It's
a dog
called Vampire Dog, and Norm Macdonald voices a vampire dog.
Oh my God, I can't wait to Google this. I'm excited when it's a movie that will inspire change. We had one just recently called A Woman's Work about NFL cheerleaders who are not treated the way you would have thought they're being treated in the NFL. And I believe in the message of that. And when I see that these movies do well, it obviously reinforces your faith in the world. So things that are both meaningful, and I try to keep my own interests out of it as much as possible, because those are just my interests, and there's millions of people out there with other interests. Both things that are meaningful, things that are quality or tell a good story, of course, things that are representative of the world around us, and things that are commercial. And I realize how hard it is to kind of hit enough of these points. So, sorry, your question was?
Yeah, like what gets you excited, and what makes it easier for you to seal a deal, to like sell a block of movies or something?
What makes it easier for me, it just depends so much on what the people are looking for, So a certain platform does really well with a certain genre. So that's exciting. I can be like, we have a whole new block of movies available that fit perfectly within that genre. So I can send that to you. But personally, as I see movies coming in that we're acquiring and putting out, it's things that speak of quality. It's the things that are hard-hitting documentaries. It's good stories. Obviously I love good cast as well. And we're hopefully looking to acquire more narrative scripted films as well. And those are also very much my jam. So those get me excited.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't say cast as your very first thing, which is what I was expecting you to say. And you actually snuck it in at the very end, which was really cool. So that's encouraging, Yeah, it's hard to have to highlight the things about certain titles that I may not enjoy for the sake of a job, but that's just kind of what comes with work, right? If I could, I'd select only movies that I'd like to work on, but that's just not necessarily how it works.
And you finished this web series. It hasn't been released yet, but you know so much about distribution. Can you talk a little bit about how your expertise is informing your own work?
Yes, very good question, because a big reason I wanted to also get involved is because I found myself being helpful to a lot of independent filmmakers. They had a lot of questions and they felt really cut off from what it is that makes their project exciting for a distributor. And I had a glimpse into what that was. So I thought, yes, definitely, this is something I can apply to my own project. So I know, for example, I had seen AVODs coming up in my previous job. I knew that this was a huge opportunity. I knew that there were so many new channels, new apps, new platforms popping up, and that they all needed content. I knew that we were soon going to be in a bit of a drought of new content, and I was hoping to sneak in there with our project and say, look, we got something. And I knew how to be realistic to a point. I knew that for such a tiny project with such a tiny budget, some recognizable faces, but nothing so quite big. We had to be realistic, and we knew that we weren't necessarily going to get an MG. So I'm not counting on that coming in. I'm not counting on somebody paying us money. I know how the market works, and I know that most likely, and we have spoken to some people about this, they will take it, they will put it up on their platform, and any money that they make, they'll kind of split the shares with us. So this is the kind of stuff that I thought I could bring to it. Plus all the research I was doing last year about how the world was changing. That was very exciting. Seeing how things like Quibi were working or not working, which it's complicated. I'm sure I have more to add here in terms of like what I could bring to it. Yeah, and I'd like to think that I had a good understanding of what to do with the art, what to do with the title, how to write how to help shape a synopsis that would be eye-catching or eye-catching enough. What kind of cast members to go for as opposed to others, because they would help us get that sale. So these kinds of things, I was so grateful to be able to bring to the project.
Do you feel like there is a drought of films from the pandemic? Because I had that assumption as well, and a lot of people were talking about that. But then, I'm submitting my first feature to film festivals right now. It does not seem like there's a drought. It seems like, in fact, that film festivals are being even more picky than they are because they have more things, or they're like, oh, it's a virtual thing only, or we only have so many slots, so we have to really be like tough on like what we pick, like, for this year. And so I was wondering, from your perspective, I'm curious, like, are you seeing a lack of movies, or is it still just chugging along as it normally would?
It really depends on what kind of business you're in. If you're Apple or Amazon, you have the money to shell out for good projects. That might be popping at Sundance or Tribeca. You have the ability to plunk that down. You're like, we want the rights. I think for a lot of the other distributors, it's a lot harder, who don't really have that kind of money to pay up for the rights of these kinds of movies. They might be getting movies that are medium or lower in terms of quality. And that's not any sort of judgment on the movies themselves. It's more of just looking at the market as a whole and seeing what people are willing to pay for, both what distributors are willing to pay for and what viewers, once the movie is out, are willing to pay for. So I have yet to really get a full understanding around the business of if there really is a drought or not. It certainly makes it feel like there isn't when people like Sky Movies in the UK or Netflix say, we got a new movie every week, don't worry about us. But I have seen certain people nervous about not having enough happening in Q3 this year. If all the movies that have been made towards the end of 2019, early 2020 got snatched up and have to come out now, either last year or this year. And we're also a little bit worried about what consumer habits are going to be like going into the summer and out of that. If there's a vaccine, if there's a bit of an opening up of the world, does that mean that people are just going to like not be at home to watch movies anymore? There's so much to think about, and it's so hard to predict.
I just wanted to weigh in from my perspective as a distribution consultant. And it's that, and maybe this is a very cynical perspective, but I represent what I call middle-class filmmakers. So filmmakers who like wouldn't be on like, they wouldn't get like an originals deal with Apple or Netflix and would be usually working with smaller distributors. And I just think it's never, like, any opportunity never trickles down to us. And I just like to say that because I think a lot of us were like, content drought, this is our chance. And then it's like, no. It probably, and it sounds like it's reinforced from what you're saying, it probably will impact those higher profile platforms and films, because then less tentpole films are being made, less higher budget films are being made because of the moratorium. But nothing ever benefits a micro budget filmmaker. So, and like, I do agree with what Alrik is saying. I'm hearing that festivals, or my perspective is that festivals are being inundated with content right
One
now.
thing I'd like to bring up is like when you say filmmaker, whoever they are, like, you know, you said the middle class filmmaker who deserves to have their film seen and deserves to be paid for what they worked on, what they poured their heart and soul into. The question really is like, you know, what does success mean to them?
Yeah.
Even before the pandemic, would they have had a low shot at getting a deal with a distributor where they were able to get an upfront MG or an upfront payment?
Oh, none of us ever get MGs. We would never expect that.
It's
like it's my job to tell them not to expect that, actually.
Or if you like, you know, you win the lottery if you get any kind of MG, you know, it's like you basically have exceeded any kind of expectation.
This is kind of what I've seen over the last few years, that this happens more and more. And I wish I understood more about the full picture of things, you know, over how it's come along, to be able to comment on that. But it's sad, but it kind of shows you, it's like capitalism. It shows you supply and demand. But it's very, very interesting to hear that like festivals are just completely filled up and they have enough stuff. I guess one thing to consider is, even if they're filled up, are they filled up with the kinds of movies that a distributor would want? And if a distributor does want them, should they want them? Is this something that's going to benefit everyone? Because not every distributor is made equal. Not every deal that a filmmaker does with a distributor is equal. And maybe you're better off not doing that deal or doing it with someone else. So
there's I live in a world of limited choices. And so it's all about totally what you're saying, like picking the best opportunity for you. But it's really good to know that, and I'm learning firsthand. I have a filmmaker who we're negotiating with 1091 right now, and we're actually redlining the agreement right now. And I'm learning firsthand like how amenable y'all are. And it's really quite and I'm, by the way, renewing my film with 1091 this week because The Orchard released my film. So this is not an overall promotional show for 1091 because I'm sure there are flaws in your system. But I am seeing some heat being drawn to your company. And I appreciate the
in a good
transparency
way
you're putting forth. Yes, good heat. Momentum.
No, I see it too. And having you mention us, obviously at the top because of the number, and your cheat sheet as well under Dear Producer was just like so very, very cool. Just getting the word out on ourselves as we rebuild the brand as well, just a little bit, because it's only been about just under 2 years since we broke off from The Orchard to be our own thing. Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm so glad. I am very glad. And I'd love to hear more about this movie.
We'll talk offline. Yeah. Alrik, do you have another go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just like, it just sounds like from what you're saying that genre doesn't necessarily matter that much in your world of sales, because there's so many different needs from the different, companies, that there's like a company that wants dramas, there's a company that wants horror, there's a company that wants sci-fi or comedy or whatever. So it doesn't feel like focusing on one genre is necessarily important for filmmakers. It's more important just to make a good movie. Is that true, or are there certain genres that are more lucrative than others in your mind?
It kind of goes up and down, which really is unfair, right? You all have heard about the Amazon thing of not taking shorts and docs. That makes it difficult to acquire new docs, very sadly, because that's,
Yeah, by the way, you also just rejected an amazing documentary because
it's 1091.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, tell me more about that as well. And hey, I get to step away from all of that and say, yeah, it's not me because I'm not in acquisitions.
This is a really good movie. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to give you, because I felt like I was too nice to you a second ago, so now I had to give you a little ribbing, but please go on.
Please do what you want. Genre doesn't matter as much as like commercial viability and how good it is or how good it looks, I guess, matter. And the interest in genres will wax and wane depending on what it is, depending on the year, depending on the time of year. People are always in the mood for to acquire holiday movies. Not my interest, but it's a fact. Horrors obviously also do very well all the time, but it just depends so much on what a distributor has carved out a niche for themselves. So in the last year or so, I think we've gotten really well known about our docs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be the same going forward. And I think kids or family stuff, I'm not quite sure if there just hasn't been enough out in the world for us to acquire, but there hasn't been much of that. So it keeps changing, definitely. And it's a big team, the acquisitions team. So they have a lot to work on themselves. They're not only looking to acquire new movies, they're looking to, keep up our relationships with the people who do provide us with movies on a regular basis and provide them with accurate reporting, provide them with numbers on how their movies are doing. So it's a lot of work there too. So hopefully that answers your question.
Can we do an exercise really quickly? Can we all form the most ideal film that would have a successful distribution? And can we give the caveat that it hasn't played Sundance or TIFF or Toronto? It's just a straight to distribution, non-festival film. Could there be a world where you can craft the perfect film without name cast and without festival prestige that you think could be a successful title? You could speak of it as, I know you don't want to talk about acquisitions and because that's a whole different kettle of fish, but for AVOD, is there a world where there would be a slam dunk title that would not have cast and would not have festival prestige?
Anything that really speaks to a niche.
Yeah.
At the moment, it seems that African-American cinema or Black cinema is really, really, really popular. And that's so good to have that kind of representation. So for example, that's a quick answer, but if you wanted to build a full exercise, we can get into that.
I like the quick answer though.
Anything that works off of the zeitgeist. If a certain thing is really popular right now, obviously the Royals in the UK are really popular right now. So a lot of movies in our catalog might be doing well. Have to take a few days to look at the numbers when they come in, but those kinds of documentaries that we have about royals and princes and princesses probably having a big bump. So it works off of zeitgeist a lot, and a lot of like piggybacking off of other big marketing.
Liz, do you think we should go to our final 5 questions, or do you have a last big question?
Usually we have to end by 2, and we gave ourselves to 2:15. So I've been like, let's just be breezy. No, I have no more questions. Sorry, final questions are fine.
All right, so I'll go first. What's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now?
It was a short film. I had gone to the New York Film Academy summer camp in London when I was 16, and it was a silent 5-minute film. How I feel about it is eternally grateful, because it and that week of filmmaking camp got me into movies forever. And I also loved how freeing it was to just express yourself and sit in a classroom afterwards and talk movies, not something school related. So I feel about it. I'm sure I'd cringe a lot if I saw it now, but I'm proud to have done it.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
So define what side of filmmaking.
Any filmmaking advice from either side of filmmaking, any advice that relates to the industry.
Oh, this is one that everyone's heard, and I hate to have to repeat it. But if you're gonna be a full-on, straight-up, independent, do-it-yourself filmmaker, whether that's writing, directing, producing, the answer of make sure there's nothing else you should be doing or could be doing, and if there really is nothing else you could be doing and this is it, then go for it. It's not what I like to have to say, but we've all seen how difficult it is, and this is a big reason why I'm not a filmmaker or independent filmmaker. And I don't know if I really consider myself an artist either, because I haven't done anything in a long time. But eventually I'd love to executive produce, down the line, not on set.
I really, this is a little off of what we normally do, but I really want to speak to what you just said, because I used to hear that a lot growing up, coming up as a person on sets, like talking to like people who I respected and, asking for advice. And then some people would be like, oh yeah, well, my advice to you is to find something else that makes more money. Or my advice to you is to, like, whatever, don't be a filmmaker because it's too hard, and I'm like in my 50s and I want to quit or whatever, or like not quit, I wish I did something else, or whatever the heck it is. And I feel like we should be reframing that as filmmakers, because like it's hard and it's something that you have to be really committed to. But I think if you do it as like you can figure out a way to do it and make it happen and make it work, right? Like Liz and I both have day jobs that we do as well as make our films, and I think like setting your expectations into what it means to be an independent filmmaker, I think is probably like a better way to like structure, like to answer that question or think about that response, because it's like, yeah, because we could all do other things. Like, we could all go off and be in other industries and be making more money doing all different kinds of things. But we're here because we love to be here, and it doesn't really matter, But like, I don't know.
Well, I agree about setting your expectations, but I guess what I meant by like, there's literally nothing else you can do, in the way that like you are a filmmaker, you are a writer, and if you were doing anything else, it would almost physically hurt you. That's kind of what I mean. Like if you have something in you, you got to get it out as a filmmaker or storyteller. I respect that, because I don't personally have stories that I want to get out, maybe minus one, but we don't. It's being realistic is paramount, as you said. Knowing that if you're going to do it, it's going to be really hard. If you're okay with that, dive right in. Right.
Sorry to sidetrack there.
You're absolutely right.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
No, I think a lot of us, and you guys tell me, since you are actual filmmakers, day by day, first you got to get it done and get it out. Then you can kind of think of your next step. Sometimes I don't necessarily don't have specific goals. I just have seen movies get made and have been like, oh, I want to be a part of that. But I don't quite know what that would mean exactly in terms of like what the goals would be. Other than get involved in stories that I really believe in. That is the most important thing.
I wanted to say this before, but I'll just say it now. I don't like being on set either, and I just want to say I think there is a desire. Not that I'm always trying to convince people to direct and to like come into the world of producing and directing. Just want to say, come to the dark side, Sana. I mean, come to us. Call yourself an artist and make some more content. And that's all. That's what I wanted to say. But I'll get to our next question, unless you wanted to respond to that.
No, I absolutely love that. And I hated to see the little bit of regret or sadness in your face when I said that I don't know if I'll return to making anything. Because I think that, my strength lies in the business side, but what's exciting about that is what I can take out of that and put into the art of it. That's so exciting. And it was exhilarating to this extremely talented team we had on the web series to shape a story with them, to do the casting, to come up with the creative angles of it. It was beautiful. But I guess I'm a wuss. Unlike the people who have dove right in, I don't know if I can make it work.
You can. You will. That's fine. Don't worry. We'll work on it later. But
that's why I'm copping out and getting a day job.
And also, you probably have like an apartment, and like
life and life. And things you got to pay for.
I love that. Considering that, if you could go back in time, what's the piece of advice you would give yourself?
Oh my God. As you can tell, I speak up and I'm not afraid of using my voice, but I wish I'd done it more. Especially as a woman, and a woman of color, I wish I had just had more faith in myself to say, this is what I believe. Even if it didn't actually amount to a lot, just speak up. I wish I had done that more in everything, in the social situations, most importantly in work situations. If it comes to pay, if it comes to something you really believe, like, no, I really don't think this movie is worth our time, whatever it is. Just to have that faith. And I am grateful for the team at Signature for drawing out that voice, my previous job in London, and so that I can use it more.
Is making movies hard?
Yes. Yeah. It's like that expression of like having to force one into existence. You've all heard that too.
Well, no, I think I have. I'm like laughing because I'm thinking about childbirth. Please reframe it. Tell us, what do you mean by that?
Of like everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it's a constant circus. Again, I am speaking about physical sets that I've been on years ago. But even being on a short film set was scary. It was like this constant. I know lots of people thrive in that, and I'm jealous of when they're putting out fires, and that's when they're almost on fire. But I don't think it worked so well for me. But it is hard. And this is why I admire filmmakers. And when I see so many movies that get made, that, you know, they're being selected at festivals, that come across our desk at work, I am in awe that people have seen it through. As you said, it feels like childbirth, giving birth to a entity which did not exist before. And it's remarkable and beautiful. And that's a big reason why I work in this business.
That was wonderful. Thank you for being on this show. How can people support you as an artist, and how can they follow you as an individual, inclusive of being an artist? What about the web series? Can they do something for the web series?
This is the hard part. Yes, if there are platforms out there that, you know, need this content, if you have success with a web series and you know how, because there is no path. I'm more used to working on distribution of feature films, not on web series or TV shows. You know, follow us on Instagram, The Myth of Control. We will as soon as we've hooked up with a distributor, be putting more and more word out there in terms of where we're available to watch. And the company that we started, my co-producer, he's already gone off to do another web series and a short film, and that company is called LDNO. So that's something to support. And personally for me, follow me on Twitter, I guess, LAX to LHR.
Is there a trailer for the web series, the TV show yet, or is it not done?
It's under construction, but the web series itself is completely ready.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
So what do you remember about talking with Sana?
What do I remember? I remember that, you know, it was one of the very few times where I got like honest, open answers from somebody in distribution. You know, I feel like when I was at AFM, like people were pretty real with me there, and I felt like, you know, there wasn't a lot of bullshitting, you know, and it was sort of made clear that like what I was trying to do is it's not gonna happen. Raise money for a movie that's not shot yet at AFM, pretty not the norm. Anyways, but especially if you don't have stars and you don't have any money. But yeah, no, it was good. I thought it was really cool to hear about what she does and what she looks for, and like what like would help her sell a movie and the way that she sells movies. It's a whole side of the industry that I'm not familiar with. But what about you, Liz?
I just wanted, you know, all I wanted to say is that I just really like her, and that I'm just like intrigued by her. I've had a few conversations with her now, and she takes notes. And this is not like a Liz specific thing. She takes notes while she's talking to someone for things to look up. She's like a heavy researcher. And it just makes me feel good knowing that someone who really actually genuinely seems to care about indie film and filmmakers, and is a filmmaker herself, is in the business. So I was just happy to know that she exists.
Yeah. But yeah, we have a very exciting thing to jump to right now, and that is Get Shorty.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
So this week we have a short film from writer and actor Julia Manis, which is like not always the way it works. Like usually it's the writer-director or the director who's sending us the shorts, but this one is a star and a writer, which is fun.
And a producer.
Oh, and a producer. Okay. Excuse me. And a producer.
Shit, is she not? Oh, fuck, take that
Is
out.
she?
Never mind.
I don't know.
I don't even know for sure.
They didn't advertise her as a producer. I think she was a producer, though. I think she, raised the money on crowdfunding and everything. She did Seed and Spark. I actually listened to her responses, so I am a little bit more in the know than often I am. But her brand new short film, Mel and Ruby, is on the show. She's here to talk about it. And before we get to her, I wanted to say it's really interesting because one of the things she talks about is finishing this movie, being super excited to send it to short film, starting the short film process, and then boom, COVID happens. And, can't do short films really, or short film festivals, it just doesn't really happen. And I was in a similar situation with the short I worked on. So we had even gotten into a few, and then they all got canceled, when COVID happened. So it's that movie still isn't out yet, and it's still kind of doing the virtual film festival thing. But I'm really excited for, Julia to get her movie, released and out into the world. So anyways, enough talking.
She was a producer. She's a writer, producer, and lead actress.
Okay, we got it right. Anyways, here is writer, producer, and lead actor of the film, Julia, to talk about it.
I decided to make Mel and Ruby into a short film because, for practical reasons, that's what I had experience in. I had written a couple of short films before, and so that was really my wheelhouse. I felt very confident in telling a story in that format. And also, I thought that it was a subject that could be told in a short film versus a feature or web series. I was inspired to make this film because I wanted to examine the nature of shame and how it shows up in our relationships, whether that's with friends, parents and children, romantic relationships. And I wanted to provide a solution, which is we should approach people with empathy. We use Seed and Spark, which is a crowdfunding platform for independent filmmakers. And on top of that, we also had a mixer where we invited friends and family, and they helped us reach our goal, and we were able to make the film that we wanted to make. So I wanted to create a Fleabag type narrative, but one that was specific to what I can do as an actor. And then I also wanted to submit to some film festivals and hopefully attend them. We had started submitting and then COVID happened, so I had to pivot. We were an official selection at a few festivals, including Sherman Oaks Film Festival. And now I'm ready to release this film to the world. And I'm so excited for people to see it. So this film is a showcase of complex women, and that was one of my main intentions when I started making this film, is that I wanted to show an authentic representation of a friendship between two women and all that entails, all the great things, all the ugly things. And also I hope that people are inspired to be a little bit more empathetic in their lives. If this year taught us one thing, it's that we need some more empathy in the world. I don't think I would really change anything about this story. I'm pretty proud that it's a very authentic depiction of a friendship. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to show not only the conflict in friendships and what happens when we bring judgment into our relationships, but I also wanted to show that there's a way to fix it and move forward and be more supportive in the future. So yeah, I like stories that are a little bit messier in the depictions of relationships, because ultimately that's human and that's what we experience in our daily lives. So I chose to end the film that way because I wanted to end on an image where they're together, they're supporting each other, and they're going off into the clinic together. The film starts with Mel alone, and by the end of it, she's had a reconciliation with her friend where they both come to an understanding of each other. So for me, that's where the story ends. I had always intended that Mel would go through with the abortion. So by having Ruby say that I'm going to go in there with you, that's Ruby saying, I support you and I'm going to stand by you. And that's the message of my film, that we should stand by each other and support each other.
So Liz, what did you think of Mel and Ruby?
I thought it showcased her as an actress, and I thought she was wonderful. I genuinely thought she was. And I know Julia. We've met once. We've exchanged a few emails over the past few years. There was a moment where I didn't really understand why she left or why she went back, but I didn't need to know, to be completely honest, because I was just like, oh, I'm a witness to a woman making a difficult decision, and I'm on board because it was captivating. My only real genuine criticism is that location looks really repurposed. It looks like a hallway for something completely different than a reproductive health center. And I could be wrong. I've been to Planned Parenthood in Los Angeles, but that's not the model for all centers. It just really felt like a hallway where they put a desk and some chairs.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'll second what you said about Julia's performance. It was very, very good, and I thought all the performances in the short were really spot on and felt very natural, and felt like I was just in the story. I like that it was a small part of a bigger story. I feel like that's the best way to do a short, or really the only way to do a short, is to do a part of a bigger story. So that was cool. I will say, like you said something that kind of echoed this about, like, you didn't know why she left and why she came back. Like, I was really confused, like, because I was like, okay, so she's gonna get an abortion, and then it's like, oh wait, she's not gonna get it, she's running away, and then, like, since the friend was like insinuating or like suggesting maybe not to get the abortion, when they came together at the end and they like connected, I wasn't sure if it was the Mel character like agreeing with what Ruby was saying and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't get the abortion, or if it was Ruby coming over to Mel's side and like, I don't care what I think you should do, I'm here to support you as a friend, which is what it's supposed to be. And so I think I was a little muddled on the meaning of the ending. And I asked a question about that specifically, and she gave the answer saying that, yes, I always intended for the audience to take away that she was going to go through with the abortion. And then as a viewer, I was like, oh, really? Like, because I wasn't quite sure if that's what it was. But I wanted to talk to you. Like, did you get that? Like, did you know that, like, oh, yeah, she's going back to do it? Okay.
I knew she was going back to do it, but I couldn't tell you why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like cause, and that's like the tough part, right? Because like her friend was saying maybe don't get it. Then she was like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do. And then she was like, oh, can I be there with you to help you? And she's like, no, I got this by myself. And then she goes in, and then she goes out. So then when she goes out, you're not sure, is she questioning what her friend said, or like, why did she leave? I feel like that's a good point,
I think that she left
because she couldn't do it alone.
Oh, wow.
Basically,
I think it was like just an incredibly emotional experience that was overwhelming. I don't know if it's like she couldn't do it alone. I don't think it was a moral quandary. I think it was like, this is too big. That's what it felt like for me.
Right, exactly. So then she leaves, and then like coming back with the friend, it was like, what are they coming back to do? Are they coming back to go through with it, or are they coming back to change the appointment? Right. Like, that was sort of my confusion. But I think obviously it makes more sense. I think maybe it just needed to be something at the very end there where maybe Ruby would say something like, she was definitely there, I'm here for you or whatever. But like, I just wanted some more clarity that she's like, I'm here to support you. Like, whatever decision you're going to make, I don't know, or like, I'm not sure what it actually needed to make that more clear.
It's not linear. Like, I totally agree. It's not linear and it's not clear, but like I said before, it really doesn't bother me for some reason, because I think the core of the film is actually Julia's performance. And while the writing is charming and the direction I do think is solid, those aren't the things that I'm watching it for. I'm actually watching it to watch Julia.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and I think like, I wonder if other people don't feel this way, if they're like, oh no, it was very clear, like, that her friend was coming to her side and then just, Mel was allowing Ruby to come in to support her because she needed that support to do this thing that she's decided to do. And then that was the ending moment. But, I feel like, yeah, for me, it was a little unclear. But I mean, I wonder if other people find that clear. But The performances were great. I liked the writing. I liked showing the friendship and like the like one of the things Julia said is she wanted to show like the intricacies and like the layers of a female friendship, and I feel like that stuff came through really strongly because like, you know, at moments they're light and they're joking and it's very serious and it's very emotional and it's like all these different levels to a friendship like all in one short. So I thought that was kind of cool.
100%. I just remembered one more thing, and I know we're running out of time, but I'm just going to say it, is that there was a moment where they're in the hallway leading up to the appointment, and they get in this big fight, and they get really loud, and I kept thinking, why am I not seeing the reactions of other people in the clinic to their very loud interaction? And also, but what I did want to say, which was great, is that they planted in the script a few minutes earlier that these are kind of like boisterous friends. Like they're very loud, they're very physical. And I think while it didn't make 100% in the edit, 100% sense in the edit, it made sense in the script stage that it was their characters were planted there.
Yeah.
So again, I really think it's a performance piece, and well done, Julia.
Yeah. And then I was going to add, I did notice a couple close-ups when they got really loud and really emotional if people were reacting, but it wasn't like a big deal. They were pretty small.
Oh,
but
man.
they're definitely
then I just totally
they're
missed
definitely
it.
in there. They're just not so. They're not. It's not a huge part of the scene.
My breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You got mail.
So we've put it off for many weeks, but we finally have some YouTube comments to read. And here's one from our episode with the Nelms brothers. Etme 1000 says, now this is how you make a show about filmmaking. As for the brothers, the highest praise I could bring, which is indeed high praise, is that they are true artists. Genuine, creative, therefore original, and thus one of the not too many fresh voices around. I thoroughly enjoyed Fat Man. Wow, that was very nice. I'm going to say that Etme was saying that our show was how to make a show about filmmaking, right? Yeah, that's a compliment to us. Do you want to read the comment from episode 300?
Sure, we'll switch off. So we have this new one from 300. It was our episode with Sev Ohanian.
Sev Ohanian, because you got it right the first time.
Boy.
Yeah.
This is from Britt Sadie. Definitely one of my favorite episodes. I listened to the podcast, but I needed to see his screen. LOL. Also, I love your shameless self-promotion in the beginning. And I couldn't remember what the shameless self-promotion was in the beginning, but oh well.
I was just us being us talking about growing an audience, probably. Thank you, Britt. That was very kind. Finally, in episode 301, we have a comment from Gary Kennedy. Thank you, Gary Kennedy. Another great interview. I'd like to watch Shelter, but my Googling hasn't been able to find it, although I'm still on the hunt. As far as submitting a short of my own, because editorial note, we are trying to encourage Gary Kennedy to submit a Gary Kennedy picture. Back to body. I don't think I've done something that's worthy of a podcast segment yet, because I too have made a short that boobs couldn't save. And then is this it? He also adds, edit, to be fair to Cameron, he should go to my YouTube and leave a brutally honest comment on my latest short. So call to editor Cameron Caves. Please go to Gary Kennedy's YouTube page and leave a brutally honest comment on anything that Gary Kennedy does.
Yeah, I watched one of Gary's shorts. It was pretty good. And then I watched half of another one, and then I didn't finish it. But I probably should. Sorry, Gary.
We did provide the link to Shelter, FYI, and I'll also share it on Twitter. I'm overdue on sharing all our Get Shorties on Twitter, so apologies to all the shorts creators. Yeah,
and then Gary responded to when I posted the link, he said, "Thanks, I should have thought to check your website." Yeah, duh. This short didn't really grab me, but I do give it extra points for having 2 child actors. That must have been a challenge. And also great job on finding the exterior locations of the school and motel. I really would have liked to see more of the exterior of the motel.
And a week ago, all the dead boys left a comment saying, is it cheating if I listen to the podcast but then came here to show some love and give a thumbs up? No, it's not cheating. What is that cheating?
No.
Is that cheating that you bring us joy, all the dead boys? Is that cheating? God, what a horrible phrase. But thank you very much for showing us love.
So if you want to be like Eat Me or at Me 1000 and write a YouTube comment, jump over to our YouTube page. Now at 210 subscribers, I must add. That's very good. You can do that, or you can show support by going on Patreon, www.patreon.com/MMIH podcast, and give what you can. Thanks in advance. We have not gotten a new Patreon in a long time, but we have lots of people on there. So thank you for all the people who are on there. It's paying for our editor. It's amazing. If you want, you can send a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. I don't know. You check every day, Liz. Have we gotten a new iTunes review?
No. No.
Damn it.
I check every day thinking maybe this time.
That's funny. And then finally, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Soni for making this episode happen. As far as us, you can find me on Twitter at Liz Manischel. You can find me on Instagram at Liz Manischel Film. Alrik, where can people find you?
Alrik B on the Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook just as Alrik Purcell. I am there very seldom, but I will be there again.
Yeah, you will. You're coming back. Check out our website, makingmoviesishard.com, where you can find the links to the things we talked about in this episode. Thanks to Cameron Caves for doing the editing, ? Hopefully Cameron's going to pull through. I wanted to add, because I heard another podcast did this, thank you to Lucas Colshaw again and again for the art. And maybe we can try to thank you in the credits, just so everyone knows of your wondrousness. Anyway, thanks to everyone for listening, and talk to all y'all next week. You can find me on, as I wipe away this flea that's in front of me, all the YouTube viewers, so excited. You could see this too. Okay. You can see me. You can find me at YouTube. No, fuck. Okay.